Welcome. First of all, I want to apologize for having to do a voiceover. Something happened to the mic. I'm not for sure what it was. But today we're going to make these cute little placemats. The pattern makes two. There is a link in the description for a free pattern. It is very minimal of materials you'll need. You need 2 blue fat quarters, a red fat quarter, a white fat quarter, a little piece of ribbon, white thread, batting, and that's about it. You can make it longer than what the pattern says by the way we cut it. I cut my batting at 9.5 by 15. You'll also need a little bit of fusible webbing for the 2 stars. I have included a star pattern in the pattern itself. You can also find one online and download it. If you have a cutting machine, you can use a star on the cutting machine and cut it that way as well. Hello, my quilting friends. If you're new here, my name is Jacque Russell, and I am with Jacque Russell Creates, where we talk about everything quilting. I want to inspire you to make traditional quilts and some art quilts. Now let's get started on making these adorable placemats. Okay, the first thing I'm going to recommend you do is iron your fabric before you start a project. You don't want to have the little creases in your fabric when you are cutting, because it can make your blocks or pieces off. Next, what you're going to do is you're going to take your blue fabric and you're going to square it up and you're going to cut a triangle on the bias. So I placed my ruler at the 9-inch and the 13.5 inch and just traced or cut a line along that edge. And that's going to make up the triangle for the placemat. Next, what you're going to do is you're going to take your red and your white fabric and you're going to cut a 5-inch by 18-inch, which should be the length of your fat quarter. And then you're going to take your ruler and you're going to cut a somewhat diagonal. You're going to have a skinny end and a fat end, and you're just making 2 pieces out of that 5-inch. You don't want it exactly the same distance on the both ends. So I want to say I put it at the 3.5 mark and the 2-inch mark at the top and just kind of cut it. So you're going to end up with 2 pieces. You'll need a total of 4 pieces. I'm sorry, a total of 3 pieces of the red per hot pad and 1 strip of the white, which will give you your 2 pieces. And you're going to lay them out, alternating the fat and skinny ends. So you have a off-centered type look. I call these wedge shapes. And then you're just going to sew them together using the 1/4-inch seam. You can add more rows if you want it wider. If you didn't want to use fat quarters and you wanted to use yardage, you can make it even longer. So I'm going to pin the ends together And I'm going to do a chain stitch through the machine. And I like to do fabric that has no distinctive front or back when it comes to the flag. Now we're going to press toward the red fabric. You're going to set your seam, and then open it up and press toward the red. You don't want to press toward the white because the red is darker and you'll see the seam through the white fabric, and we don't want that. So in this case, we want to always press toward the red fabric. We're going to continue to press and stitch these strips together using the 1/4 inch seam. Now the mic decides to work, and I'm sorry if it sounds funny. Hopefully we work through it.
Now we're just pinning this last strip on. Now that we have the stripes ironed out, all sewn together, we're going to take your blue and you're going to just position it however wide you want it. You just kind of lay it out, move it around, and kind of see where you want it. Here you can see where it's going to be. Like this one's going to be like much longer than this one, just by the way I cut the pieces. So I think I'm gonna move it in just a smidgen here. You can line it up more toward the corner if you would like. Or like I said, this is where you can add more rows if you wanted to. So I get it positioned where I want it, and I take and line up the blue fabric with the line, because the blue fabric, this is the straight edge, where on the red it is not 100% straight. So I lay it down where I want it, how I want it positioned, and then I take a friction pin and I'm just gonna draw a line. So when I flip the blue piece over, I know where to line it up so it's straight. So I just flip it over, and we're just going to line the edge up with that line. And I'm just going to pin it in a few spots. Then we're going to sew 1/4 inch from the blue seam. And then when we flip it over, it will give us our blue triangle. So I have it sewn, and I'm going to flip it over and kind of hand press it. Make sure it's, lining up how I wanted it to. And then we're just going to use our ruler and cut off this extra piece here. You can throw that in your scraps. You can, add it to anything else you want. So we're just going to cut our piece off, and then we're going to iron this toward the blue, and then we're going to trim it to your desired length. You want it, to square it up. Make sure, it's all even. So I did cut my batting at 9.5 by 15. So I want to make sure that that's where my measurement falls here. So I'm just going to straighten up this edge, and I'm actually going to line up the blue because the blue is a straight edge. And now I have another straight edge that I can line up. And yes, I'm cutting quite a bit off, but you can, like I said, you can make it longer. I just actually have already pre-cut my batting. That's why I'm cutting it at this length. So I know I need it to be 9.5 by 15. Okay, I have it all trimmed up. And so with this, we're doing what's considered a self-binding. You're taking the back fabric, and that's what's going to give you your binding. So we're going to lay out our blue fabric first with the right side down, the side that you want to be shown on the back. Then you're going to put your batting down, and you're going to leave about 1 inch to 1.5 inches along the edges. Then you're going to lay your top fabric on top of that. And so you want, like I said, you want to make sure you have an inch along the edge. So to trim my fabric, I'm just going to measure out an inch and trim. So my background fabric is 17 by 11 and a half. You can cut it a little longer if you want, and then trim after you do the quilting. So I'm just going to use 505 temporary adhesive. I'm going to pull back and spray. Make sure you're in a well ventilated area. I have my front door open if you're using your basting spray. And then I'm going to pull the padding back with the top and spray again. So now I don't have to worry about any pins as I'm quilting. I am doing, per se, a traditional quilt. So I'm going to stitch on each side of the seam about 1/8 to 1/4 of an inch on the red and then the white, all the way on all of them. I'm not going to stitch on the blue because we're going to add ribbon after we stitch here. So we're going to go stitch this first. Okay, so my camera died and I didn't know it, so we didn't get a few of the footage. So what we did is we took some ribbon. It's just some patriotic ribbon that I got from probably Joann's, I think. And I just stitched down the blue on each side. Then we appliqued on the stars. I used Heat and Bond Light. And I said we were doing a self-binding. So what I did is I took the background fabric and I folded it up about 1/4 of an inch, and then I'm folding it over onto the top, and that's going to be our binding. And I pressed it at each time. Now I am working on doing the stitching, and we're using a decorative stitch. So here we're using the snowflake or the star stitch. You can use whatever stitch that you feel comfortable with. You can even use hand stitch it down. So I'm going to stitch here a little bit so you can see. I'm at a corner. I just finished the stitch and now I'm rotating it to come down the other side. I am stitching as close to the edge as I can to make sure that I get it attached down, and then you can see it shows up on the back. So I'm going to finish stitching this. So there we have it. Both are placemats. This one I used a higher loft batting. This one I used just plain 80/20 cotton, flatter batting. You can see the decorative stitching and you can see it along the back. If you do a decorative stitch, I do recommend that you check your bobbin because these decorative stitches uses more thread than your traditional straight stitch. That's what happened with me. I ran out of bobbin, and so I had to try to guess and line up, and you get a little oops. At least it's on the back, but you know, you still check your bobbin. Great tip before you start your binding or even quilting on a bigger quilt. So if you like this video, give it a thumbs up, and I would like you to comment in the comments below what you learned this video. You know, did you learn about, you know, the per se the self-binding as a new technique? Did you, didn't realize that you could use non-straight edge squared pieces to make a quilt? You know, maybe adding some embellishments to your quilt was, something new to you. So let me know in the comments below. If you have a friend or family member that quilts and would like this project, be sure to share it, and don't forget to go down in the description and the pinned comment and get your free pattern for this tutorial. It does make 2 placemats. And if you feel like sticking around, be sure to hit that subscribe button and that notification bell so you know the next time that I post a video, which I try to post most Tuesdays and Thursdays, and then a short on Saturday. Until then, happy quilting, my friends. See you on the next video.